Over the past week, it has been my exciting thrill to have Dr. Bradley Hunter Welch here practicing and preparing for today's dedicatory concert of the N.S. and Henry B. Paup Sanctuary Pipe Organ. Now we all get to hear him play his first concert on this beautiful instrument, and before he does, I'd like to mention a few highlights about him. He has taught at Southern Methodist University and Baylor University. He has served as Director of Music and Arts and organist at Highland Park United Methodist Church in Dallas. Currently, he devotes his full-time attention to a thriving solo concert career, performing approximately 20 concerts annually under the exclusive artistic management of Philip Truckenbrode of Hartford, Connecticut. He serves as artist-in-residence at Christ Church, an Anglican church in Plano, Texas, and it's one of the largest Anglican churches in the United States. And with all that, will you please join me in welcoming Dr. Bradley Hunter Welch.
Thank you so very much. It is truly an honor and a privilege and blessing to be here for the dedication of this fabulous new instrument. You know, there are a lot of jokes about Dallas and Fort Worth and the rivalry between these two great cities. And you know that I'm from Dallas, but I love Fort Worth. Whenever I drive to Fort Worth, I feel the knots in my shoulders relax. It's wonderful. But I was thinking right before I left the house today, I said to my wife, I said, you know, with this instrument, Fort Worth now has 2 pipe organs larger than the largest pipe organ in Dallas. So Dallas has nothing on Fort Worth. And of course, one of the most fun things about a large pipe organ is that it can shake the rafters and thrill your soul, as we heard in that opening French toccata by the French Romantic composer Eugene Gigout. Next, we'll get another aspect that's so wonderful about large instruments. I tend to think of organs and organ sound in the sense of a painter's palette, you know, that wooden thing that they hold in their hand and then mix colors in different ways. Well, that's what all of these knobs really are, stops that control different ranks of pipes, different kinds of sound, and the art in playing the organ, among several things, is finding the most beautiful sounds of the instrument, finding those combinations and showing them off. So I like to play this next piece that you'll hear, the set of variations by Max Drischner on O Run You Shepherds. Each of these will show off a different set of flute, string, and reed colors. Drischner was a 20th century composer, but many of his pieces were really quite folk-like in the way that he set them. This one in particular is a setting of a Lutheran chorale that we don't sing very often here in the United States. But it's a wonderful Christmas tune, and you will hear from the beginning how it begs for all sorts of antiphonal treatments, just the way that it's laid out. It asks for lots of echoes, so you'll get to hear some sounds that are loud and then softer, and then some of the softest sounds up in the celestial division in the ceiling of the room. Total of 9 sets, 9 variations, and the last one is a rollicking shepherd's dance. So listen for this huge variety of color that only a large instrument like this can provide. So one of the challenges in showing off an instrument like this, an instrument of any size, but in particular one like this, is how to show everything that it can do in less than 8 hours. I was glad when they said that we were doing a 5 o'clock concert instead of 8 o'clock. I thought, well, that'll give us a little extra time. But I also know that, that we can get the job done in a little bit shorter time than that. The next piece that I'm going to play is one of the monuments of the organ literature, Bach's Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. This is really another set of variations, similar to what you just heard. It begins with a ground bass, the theme in the pedal alone, very softly, and that's the theme upon which the whole piece is built then. What follow are a set of 20 variations. Each one, in my mind, is kind of like stained glass. The sun shining through the stained glass at different times of the day, different windows give different effects in the room. And while it's the same theme all the way through, each variation brings out a different aspect of it, and therefore gives an opportunity to show off a different color of this instrument's palette. Now, once again, a large instrument does not guarantee a good instrument. It's due to the smart thinking and the true artistry of the builder to compose these various many parts of the instrument in such a way that each one does what only it can do, and that not only are they good on their own, but the way that they combine is very successful. I've had the honor of working with Dan Garland over the past 12 years on several of his instruments, one here in Fort Worth, a fabulous instrument at University Christian Church, and then a smaller instrument in Dallas. But what is a consistent theme with Dan is incredible attention to excellence in every detail, and that has been borne out and affirmed once again in this instrument. So I'd love for Dan and his team to stand and for us to give them thanks once again for their work. So in addition to Dan Garland, there are so many others without whom this instrument would not be here. I want to thank, in particular, the senior minister of this church, Dr. Tim Brewster, for his support of the ministry of music and worship arts here. It's always obvious when music is seen as a vital and integral part of worship and the whole life of discipleship in the church. And I'm rejoicing in the fact that First Methodist is one of those. And special thanks also to Taylor Davis, and I was joking with her, calling her the Right Reverend Dr. Peggy Graff, for their leadership and the week in, week out dedication and service to this church. And special thanks also to Hank and Ann Paup for your generous initial gift, guaranteeing that this instrument would be a reality. So would you join me in thanking these folks? The next piece that I'd like to play is one of those that was so touching to me when I first played it. I remember exactly where I was. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had just bought a big stack of music and was reading through it, and there was something wonderful about this piece. I recorded it on my CD at Broadway Baptist here, and a friend of Raymond Haan, the composer, bought my CD to give to him, and I was eager to know the composer's thoughts. It's always good to find out what the one who initiated the piece thinks of the performer's interpretation. So I was eager to know, and this friend reported back that he really enjoyed my performance, my use of color and everything, but he thought that I played it too fast. So I thought, okay, that's good to know. Fast forward a few years, I had the opportunity to give the world premiere of a different piece that Ray Haan wrote to celebrate the inauguration of a new pipe organ in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so when the piece arrived, I looked straight at the tempo marking, and it said slowly and deliberately. So I was determined to satisfy his tempo requirement. So knowing that I'd have the opportunity to play this for Ray before I played it for the public, I prepared diligently, and when Ray and I met, I took it a few notches slower than I thought was tolerable, just knowing that he likes his music slow. So I played the piece. It's a beautiful piece in arch form, builds to full organ, and then drifts away into nothing at the end. And Ray came up to the organ afterwards, and he said, it was really very moving. He said, it was really wonderful the way you handled the crescendo and everything was just seamless. The way you used the colors of the organ, it was exactly what I wanted. And I said, thank you. What did you think about the tempo? And he said, I thought it was too fast. So I always keep that in mind when I play this piece. It's a wonderful piece in ABA form, making use of some of the beautiful solo colors, the English horn at the beginning of the solo division, and then when it comes around at the end, you'll hear the orchestral oboe in the choir division singing forth the beautiful melody. The middle section, the B section, I like to think of as a grand string orchestra, all of the strings of the Fort Worth Symphony gathered together, sawing away with their rosin-rich bows, making this beautiful build-up. It really is quite a simple piece, but I find it quite profoundly moving. Then after that, I'd like to play for you John Cook's Fanfare. This Fanfare Cook wrote really in celebration and expression of the psalm that you see printed there in your program, Blow the Trumpet at the New Moon. This organ has many trumpets to blow at every kind of moon that there might be. If this organ were on Jupiter, there'd be a trumpet for every moon. Dan and I were joking as I was playing and demonstrating, you know, all of the different sounds that I was using throughout. He said, all the organists in the audience will be sitting there looking at the programs thinking, is that the tuba magna or the tuba mirabilis? Which one is that? So, not to worry about that. It's all wonderful and a great piece that showcases the English sound of this instrument. So first, Ray Haan's Pastorale, and then the Fanfare by John Cook. You know, sometimes you plan a program out and you think, okay, I've got everything that's covered, all the bases. And then sometimes, literally, I feel like the Holy Spirit will speak to me and say, what if you do this one other thing? So I'm going to give you a bonus, no extra charge. And I'll give you a story that goes with it. My grandmother used to live, she's now deceased, but she lived 2 doors down from the church where we were members, Concord United Methodist. And we didn't have an organ in our home, so when I wanted to practice the organ, I would go to this church, go to our church and practice on the organ there. And if she saw that I was there, she'd come knock on the door and ask if she could come in and listen. And I was always glad to have a captive audience for whatever Bach prelude and fugue or toccata I'd been working on. And so she came in and I'd tell her a little about the music and then I'd start to play. But I noticed a pattern. About 30 seconds into whatever I was playing, she would reach for the hymnal and she'd proceed to flip through the hymnal during the rest of the Bach prelude and fugue. And then I'd finish the piece and she'd look up and say, could you play 378? So it's always good to play something everyone knows. And that is what you will hear next in a setting of hymn number 378 in the United Methodist Hymnal, a setting by Frederick Swan. an instrument is what I'm going to share with you next. This setting is really unlike anything else in the organ literature, and it tests the organ's expressive ability to hold back and release sound. It also was designed for an instrument that happens to be the largest fully operational pipe organ in the world at the Wanamaker department store in Philadelphia, now a Macy's store. I've always thought it interesting that the largest pipe organ in the world is not in a church, but in a department store in the United States. It's kind of a monument to capitalism, I think. In any case, this instrument is remarkable not only because of its size, but because of its huge number of string pipes, pipes that are meant to simulate the sounds of violins and violas and cellos and basses. And Virgil Fox, when he was invited to play for a national convention of the American Guild of Organists, and he was to play at the department store, he wanted something that organists had never heard before, and it was difficult to play Bach in any kind of an authentic sense on that instrument. So he took Leopold Stokowski's arrangement of this Bach chorale, Come Sweetest Death, for the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he made it available for an orchestra of one at the organ. Not many organs can pull this off. This one can. There are two verses. The first one never gets very loud. The melody is played very softly in the tenor range on a stop called the vox humana. It's a haunting, ethereal sound. Then the second verse builds all the way to full organ, the full power of the instrument, and then begins to fade away. Fox arranged this second verse to be like the most brilliant final sunset that any of us will ever see. The sky is filled with fiery red and yellow and orange, and gradually begins to fade into that darkness before the never-ending dawn. There's no fancy footwork or pyrotechnics during this piece, so I'd invite you to close your eyes and let the sound of this music wash over you, especially in this season of Lent. There's something incredibly solemn and moving about this piece. And I think in some ways it expresses what Christ must have felt that evening in the garden when he said, Father, please let this cup pass from me, but not my will, but yours be done. Come, sweetest death, come, blessed rest, take my hand and gently lead me on. So now comes the audience participation portion. I think this is absolutely wonderful that a new text has been brought into creation in honor of this instrument, but most importantly, in honor of the artistry and friendship of Dan Garland. So I'll play an introduction. It'll be really obvious when you're to start singing. And we'll do the 3 verses. There will be a brief interlude between the second and third. And then at the conclusion, I'll ask you to be seated, and then I'll go straight into the closing work of the program, which is fantasy on the same tune, LOBE den Herren. We know it as Praise to the Lord the Almighty. You now know it as Praise is the Beautiful Song. This piece, I have to tell you, it has a funny story of Genesis, and I'll make it quick. Aaron David Miller, the composer of this piece, was in Dallas to play a concert at Highland Park United Methodist in the spring of 2010. He had some of his own compositions on the first half, and the second half contained a 4-movement improvised symphony. We gave him themes, and then he improvised a 25-minute piece of music. I always say that I'm scared of people like that because I wonder what their brain is doing while I'm standing there having a conversation with them. At intermission, a dear friend of mine who sang in the choir, Roy Johnson, came over to me and said, how do you like his music? And I said, oh, I love his composition. It's very nice. And he said, how would you like him to write a piece for you? And I said, well, if we're thinking about commissioning something, let me look at some more of his music and maybe a few other composers, and we'll decide on one if that's what you have in mind. So he nodded and went back to his seat. We heard a stunning second half, and my friend Roy came up to me after the concert and said, well, my wife's over there writing her check for your new piece. And so I thought, well, this is going to be fun to have a new work written for me. So I make my way over to Roy's wife, Sue, and Aaron Miller, and she handed the check to Aaron, and I said, so I hear you're writing a piece for me. And he said, yes, I guess so. And I said, well, how much will that check buy me? And he looked at it, and his eyes got really big, and he said, oh, I think about 9 or 10 minutes worth. So I told him I wanted him to base it on a familiar hymn, one that could, a piece that could show off lots of color, that would have some wonderful harmonically inventive moments, that would use wonderful irregular meter, which he does quite often when he improvises symphonies. And then Sue piped in and said, oh, and you have to write a really difficult pedal cadenza at the end for Bradley. So we basically had the piece written for him at that point. All he had to do was type it into the computer. He sent it to me 3 months later, and I was really thrilled with the result, and I know you will be as well, based on this great hymn tune of the faith, which we're now going to stand and sing in a new incarnation. Please stand.